In Ohio, a man named Curtis stares up at the sky. Dark clouds loom overhead, and as the rain starts to fall, something feels off. It's not water, it looks like motor oil. Confused and uneasy, he brushes it off and heads home. At breakfast, Curtis sits with his wife, Samantha, and their young deaf daughter, Han. Samantha stays home to care for Han and also sews items to sell at the local market every Saturday. Curtis, meanwhile, works in construction. Later that afternoon, Samantha's friends visit, bringing their children to play. Everything is going well, until one of them notices Han holding a sharp piece of wood with nails. Samantha quickly runs over to stop her, shouting wouldn't help, after all. Just then, it begins to pour outside, and Curtis's work is called off due to the storm. The crew heads to a local bar to unwind. Curtis drops his close friend Duarte off afterward. Duarte says Curtis has a great life, but Curtis admits things aren't always as perfect as they seem. Their conversation ends abruptly when Duarte's wife quietly appears, urging him to come inside. Later, Curtis returns home and checks on Han. Samantha mentions their daughter still struggles to connect with other kids. The next day, Curtis cleans the yard to keep dangerous objects away from Han. As he works, dark clouds gather. Lightning strikes nearby, and their dog, Red, barks uncontrollably. When Curtis moves to grab Han's hand, Red breaks free and attacks him. But then, Curtis jolts awake in bed. It was just another nightmare. At breakfast, he can't shake how real the dream felt. He sees Han playing with Red and panics, pulling her away. Samantha, confused, asks what's wrong, but Curtis brushes it off and leaves without eating. Later at work, Curtis is distracted. He keeps rubbing his arm, remembering the bite from his dream. His boss, Jem, is furious about delays and demands extra hours to make up lost time. Curtis asks Duarte to help him get some extra supplies before heading to the site. On his break, Curtis sees a strange flock of black birds flying in odd patterns. He asks Duarte if he notices anything strange, but Duarte didn't see a thing. Because of overtime, Curtis arrives late to a meeting at Han's school. He's covered in mud and hasn't had time to shower. They learn more about sign language, something Curtis needs to practice since Samantha spends more time with Han. Later that day, heavy rain returns. Curtis rushes Han into the car, but the visibility is poor. They crash. Bleeding from his head, Curtis watches in horror as strange men appear, smashing the windows and dragging Han away. Suddenly, Curtis wakes up again, screaming. Another dream. He stumbles downstairs, pale and sick. Samantha notices and asks if he's okay. Curtis lies, saying it's just a cold, and tells her to go to the market with Han. While Samantha argues with customers over prices at the market, Curtis uses the supplies he got from work to build a fence around Red's doghouse. He apologizes to the dog. He should be cleaning the yard, but something draws his attention, the door to an old storm shelter. He finds the key, opens it, and steps inside, an idea forming in his mind. That night, Samantha counts the money she earned and adds it to their vacation savings. She asks why Red is outside now, but Curtis avoids the question. She pushes again, but Curtis ignores her, glued to the TV news reporting a gas leak that killed a family. His paranoia deepens. The next day, Curtis sees Han watching the storm through the window. As he approaches, he spots a man outside staring at them. Panicking, Curtis grabs Han and hides. Suddenly, the entire house shakes. Objects float in midair. Curtis struggles to breathe and wakes up again. Another nightmare. This time, he's wet the bed. He rushes to cover it before Samantha enters. When she tries to check on him, Curtis snaps. He quickly apologizes and tells her to go to church. He'll stay home with Han. Once she leaves, he changes the sheets and washes the evidence. Later, he takes Han to the library and distracts her with a children's book while secretly researching mental illness. On the way home, they stop at a grocery store to buy canned food, lots of it. This makes them late for lunch with Samantha's family, who scold Curtis for skipping church. That afternoon, he cleans out the storm shelter, stocks it with supplies, and spends hours reading survival books. Eventually, Curtis visits a doctor, admitting he hasn't slept in 4 days. He describes his vivid nightmares, the bedwetting, and the lingering pain from the dog bite. The doctor gives him a short prescription and recommends he see a psychiatrist in Columbus. Meanwhile, Samantha visits the insurance office to ask about surgery for Han's hearing. Good news, their policy covers it all. Back at the pharmacy, Curtis is relieved to find his medication is affordable thanks to the same insurance. That night, the family celebrates over dinner. Samantha is thrilled about the surgery and Curtis plays along, but doesn't tell her about the pills. The next morning, Curtis feels better. He looks well-rested, and Samantha notices the change. But at work, things still don't feel right. Curtis talks with Duarte about food supplies for the shelter when he hears thunder, though the sky is clear. Duarte hears nothing. Suddenly, Curtis panics. He rushes behind a dumpster, vomiting and gasping for air as a full-blown panic attack takes over. While driving, Curtis suddenly feels overwhelmed by anxiety. He pulls over, trying to catch his breath. Once calm, he notices a nearby lot selling shipping containers and buys one on impulse to expand his storm shelter. Later, he visits his mother, who is clearly disoriented from heavy medication. It's revealed that she developed paranoid schizophrenia at the same age Curtis is now. Afraid he's following in her footsteps, he tries to ask her about those years, but she can't remember much. Worried, Curtis calls his doctor and explains he can't drive all the way to Columbus. He asks for another option. That night, he crunches the numbers and starts planning to turn his shelter into a full survival bunker. The next morning, he secretly applies for a home improvement loan, keeping it from Samantha and ignoring warnings from others. Back at work, Curtis asks his friend Duarte to help him borrow some tools from the company, strictly against the rules. Duarte hesitates but agrees, concerned for his friend's mental state. Curtis insists he's fine. Later, Curtis visits a local counselor and pours out all the theories he's gathered from books and online research. She reminds him she's not a psychiatrist and can't give a diagnosis, but she's here to listen. Curtis opens up about his mother, how she vanished from their lives, was later found digging through trash, and eventually committed to a state hospital. He also begins to describe the disturbing dreams. That night, while returning from a school meeting, Curtis stops the car. The sky is flashing with lightning, but Samantha and Han are asleep. No other drivers seem to notice. It only deepens his fears that something is wrong with him. On Saturday, while Samantha and Han are at the market, Curtis and Duarte begin construction on the expanded shelter. But when Samantha returns and sees what's happening, she's furious, especially after learning Curtis took out a loan. She demands an explanation for everything: the bunker, locking up the dog, and the secrecy. But Curtis says nothing and walks off to check on Han, leaving her in tears. That night, Curtis overdoses on his medication. Samantha wakes up to find him having a seizure, bleeding on the bed. Panicked, she calls an ambulance. Curtis begs her not to, but she won't listen this time. After the emergency, Curtis finally confesses everything. He promises he's been seeing a counselor because he doesn't want to abandon his family like his mother did. The next day, the family visits the hospital for Han's hearing checkup. Her surgery is approved and scheduled in 6 weeks. Back at work, Curtis asks his boss, Jim, to remove Duarte from his team. He doesn't want to keep dragging his best friend down. Jim agrees but warns Curtis. He's missed too many days. Later, Curtis buys gas masks, but they're more expensive than expected. Meanwhile, Duarte's wife tells Samantha about the gossip surrounding Curtis's behavior. Samantha defends him, insisting they're fine, but she's clearly worried. Some days later, Curtis is working on the bunker when his brother, Kyle, shows up after hearing concerns from Samantha. He's worried about Curtis's mental health. But Curtis brushes it off, telling Kyle to visit their mother instead. Their conversation is awkward and tense. As Kyle prepares to leave, Curtis remembers something. He was supposed to rehome the dog, and asks Kyle to take Red. On a rainy afternoon, Curtis walks into the kitchen to find Samantha, soaking wet, reaching for a knife. But it's just another dream. The next morning, Curtis still feels disturbed by it. At breakfast, when Samantha tries to touch his hand, he pulls away. That's when they notice Jim standing outside. Curtis runs out to meet him, and hears devastating news. Jim knows Curtis stole equipment and lied. He's fired, with only 2 weeks of health insurance left. Duarte is suspended without pay for helping him. When Curtis tells Samantha, she slaps him and walks away with Han. Later, Curtis visits the counselor, only to learn she's been transferred. The new one wants to start fresh, but Curtis, frustrated and exhausted, refuses to revisit everything. He walks out. Back home, he buries himself in finishing the shelter. Samantha, meanwhile, sews clothes for neighbors to bring in some extra cash. It's not enough. She's forced to dip into their vacation savings. That night, Samantha finally speaks to Curtis. He explains that his fears come from another dream. For the first time in a while, he reaches for her hand. Samantha calmly tells him they're canceling the beach trip. His final paycheck will cover 2 months of bills. Han's surgery will be delayed. They'll both find work and try again, but Curtis has to see a real psychiatrist. She also wants him to attend a school dinner to help him reconnect socially. On the night of the event, Curtis is confronted by Duarte. Hurt and angry, Duarte accuses Curtis of betraying their friendship and getting him suspended. Curtis tries to calm him down, but Duarte pushes him. Curtis fights back, and suddenly, he explodes, throwing a table and shouting that a massive storm is coming and no one is ready. Curtis suffers a breakdown. Samantha quickly steps in and takes him home. Sometime later, Curtis sees Han standing in the middle of the road. He runs to grab her, shielding her as a strange flock of birds flies overhead, moving in chaotic patterns before suddenly falling from the sky, dead. Terrified, Curtis rushes back inside as a real storm siren blares. But this time, it's not a dream. It's raining hard, and the siren continues. Curtis grabs Samantha and Han, rushing them into the storm shelter. Inside, they lock the door and put on gas masks, just in case. They wait for the storm to pass. Hours go by, and eventually, they fall asleep. In the morning, Curtis wakes up to silence, but still feels the storm outside. Samantha gently urges him to open the door. Curtis insists it's not over. He says he can hear it. He asks her to feel the door, but she senses nothing. As he backs away in fear, Samantha refuses to take the key, telling him this is something he has to face himself. Curtis hesitates, then slowly steps forward and opens the door. Outside, it's peaceful. Sunny skies. Neighbors are cleaning up after a minor storm. There was no disaster, just the usual weather. Later, Samantha takes Curtis to see a psychiatrist. The doctor prescribes new medication and recommends rest away from the shelter. Curtis will need time in a treatment facility. It's the only way to recover fully, even if it means being apart from his family for a while. The next day, they take a short trip to the beach. Curtis and Han build a sand castle by the water, enjoying the moment. Suddenly, Han looks up at the sea and signs the word storm. Samantha comes over, and they all look toward the ocean. Dark clouds are gathering. Thick, oily rain begins to fall from the sky. And far in the distance, a massive storm is approaching. Curtis turns to Samantha, and she nods. She sees it too, leaving us to wonder, were Curtis's visions a symptom of illness? Or a warning of something real all along? So that's it. Hope you enjoy the story. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more videos.